Eric Woolery is a CPA, a bean counter, and in Orange County government there are lots of beans to count, $6 billion annually. Woolery has just issued his annual report of county finances, and he'll give us the good and the bad. Are we smoothly sailing or going broke? But Woolery will also respond to a recent lawsuit that accuses him of misusing funds. Who said bean counting's dull? Eric Woolery. He's next on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by...
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
All your life, people talk about what's best for you. But to most people, it's just that. Talk. Unless you're with Memorial Care, a healthcare system devoted to one important thing: what's best for you.
So I've been here since 81, 82.
Wow. Wow.
So I've
Well,
seen
hi, I'm Rick Reiff, and I'm talking with Eric Woolery. Well, Eric, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You have just issued your Citizens Report. Here it is. I'll note that we've got a bloodhound on the cover. There's dogs all over this thing on the inside pages, kind of live. You know, you're making these numbers interesting. And
right.
So what's with the why the dogs?
Well, you know, we have the Orange County Taxpayer Watchdog. It's our logo. Our Jameson is his name. He's the little bulldog, and we figure he needed some friends.
Is there really a Jameson, or
one of my employees did? Her son had a dog whose name was Jameson, so that's where it kind of came from.
Yeah.
Jameson needs some friends. Dogs like to run in a pack, so we thought we'd introduce him to one of the 35 dogs that the sheriff's department
Okay,
has.
so with all these fun pictures and things, what kind of shape are we in financially?
The county's doing good. It's moving up. We always have our challenges. The state seems to throw us a curveball every few years, and there's a few coming down the line. What's really saving Orange County right now is property values. Our assessed value, even though we're the third most populous county in the state, our assessed value is the second highest.
Yeah, home prices are going up, so property taxes go up, so the county has more money.
Correct.
Now, what happens, you know, if something bad happens, like the real estate market tanks again?
Well, the good news is we drop less than some of the counties around us, but we'll have to manage ourselves through that.
So right now, does the good stock market play into it at all?
It helps with certain aspects of our finances, like the pension plans. You know, a lot of that money
so
is
there's
invested.
more earnings for the pension plan, so a little less of a hole to dig out of.
Correct, and it kind of makes up that lost ground from the 2008 when everything kind of went down.
All right, so right now, I would surmise right now is probably a nice time to take a snapshot because the money's coming in.
Right. Well, and it's moving up. If you look at us from budget to actual, some of our revenues are off from what the spending plan, the budget, was budgeted, but what we're gaining is the property tax, which is kind of that stable funding source.
All right. And I want to get into the weeds a little bit on this in a moment, because I see some trouble signs that I want to run through you. But first, just very briefly, what is you're the Auditor-Controller.
Correct.
You're elected. Probably one of the most obscure, if you don't mind my saying, elected positions. People go in and they, who knows, this guy's the incumbent. So anyway, what do you do?
Well, there's two primary functions, and when I talk to some of our civic groups, it's the auditor portion, which is kind of the referee in a game, if you like football, and there's the controller, which is the scorekeeper, the accountant side. So as the auditor, we look at the accounting, or we audit the county's books, we audit their functions to make sure that the policy set by the board is being followed.
All right.
The controller side is pretty straightforward. We keep the books and pay the bills.
Bean counting.
Exactly.
Okay. So that's the function. The county stuff, you don't get into like the cities or the school districts or that.
Actually, we do. We all know the treasurer, tax collector, and the assessor and what they do. But what a lot of folks don't realize is we're kind of in the center of that wheel. We actually calculate the tax bill you receive. So the assessor assesses your property. We calculate the bill, how much you have to pay, depending on where your property is located. And then once the money is collected by the tax collector, we disperse that money either to the cities, the school districts, the special districts, or the county, whomever is entitled to that
Now,
revenue.
you know, from time to time, people suggest, do we need all these elected offices? Why not take your job and combine it with the treasurer, tax collector? It's kind of the same thing. And in the big cities, in LA, in San Francisco, I think in San Diego, they've already made those non-elected positions.
Actually, the city auditor or the city controller for LA is elected.
Okay, and in the city of LA, but
right.
the county, I'm
county
saying
is
those
an
county
appointed.
positions, they have now made appointed positions. How do you feel about that?
Well, there's a check and balance. If you look at our government at the federal level, the state level, you've always have this check and balance, judicial, executive, legislative branch. In the counties, we're a microcosm or a small portion of the state government because we do a lot of state programs. The auditor-controller is that check and balance because the board takes on some of the executive functions and the legislative. So having an independently elected auditor-controller.
Well, why do you think those cities then have done that? The major cities have made those appointed positions.
The counties that do have,
or the counties, I should say.
Yeah, the counties, most of them until about 1985, those consolidations happened back in the 1800s. In the 1985, they actually started combining it into a consolidated financial director's position where they kind of brought them together. And I think part of why that was successful is they didn't give the voters a chance to actually decide whether to make them elected or appointed. It just said, oh, do you want to consolidate? And most people are for consolidating of government. I am too. And so they just look at it as, oh, we're shrinking the size of government. They didn't realize they were giving away their ability to elect.
Well, give me one example where you think it's good. Is there something that has come up in your department or a potential situation where it's good to have the independent auditor?
Yeah, we had a couple of issues that came up right when I took office back in 2015. One was a retroactive pension for one of the members of the Board of Supervisors. And I just wanted to make sure that that payment was legal and vetted. And you know, there was some contention on that because I thought the information given to me wasn't in-depth enough to really support that until we finally kind of went back and forth a little bit.
What was the upshot of that? We're talking about Supervisor Sean Nelson.
Right.
There was some issue about how he was taking his pension. We won't have to let's not get into the weeds on that.
Right.
But what was the upshot? Did he prevail? Did you prevail, or what?
Well, I think we both prevailed. I mean, I prevailed in that we were able to really vet that and make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, and that it was a legal payment. I think he prevailed in that the law was followed as well, and the board directives were followed.
Okay. As I referenced at the top of the show, you are currently involved in a lawsuit, and of course, when the county watchdog gets accused of doing something, that adds a little spice to it.
Does.
You're the guy that's supposed to be watching this, and now you are the subject of a lawsuit. A employee that you let go. She was your internal auditor, which is a big position, I think, and one that you had just gotten back under your purview. That's another long story of you got a lot of infighting. There's a lot of infighting that goes on in your office. But anyways, you got this audit back. The supervisors were doing this thing called internal audits. You fought to get it back.
Right.
You get it back. The person that's in that job, you let her go. She files a lawsuit for wrongful termination, I guess would be a good term for it. And in it, she accuses you of misusing funds, to wit that you had county employees driving your kids to school and stuff and babysitting your kids on the job. So how do you respond to that?
That was completely false. When I came to office, I came as an outsider. I'm the first auditor-controller elected to the county that actually didn't come up through county staff. And with that, I brought some new ideas to the office, one being the taxpayer watchdog, being that check and balance. And whenever you put yourself into that position, some people are not going to like that. Whenever you try to create real change, there's some strife. And here, I can't really get into the details of why we terminated Ms. Smart. Only she can waive her privacy rights, and then we can share that, or eventually if we go to court, it's going to come out in the court, which I'm for, because then I'll be vindicated. But essentially, you have an internal audit director who is overseeing audits of county policies and wasn't following some of those policies.
Right.
themselves.
Yeah. I mean, you've been pretty forthright that you make no apologies for the termination, and that you have actually challenged the plaintiff to allow her personnel records to be released, because that will show.
It'll show the reason, and it's going to come out in court anyway.
Yeah.
So, if you want to create allegations that are unfounded, well, let's be transparent.
And I did reach out to her attorney, Devin Lyon, who gave me this comment. I said, will she release her records, and any other comment you want to make on the lawsuit? And she said, thank you for reaching out, providing me with this opportunity to respond. At this time, we are in active litigation, and I do not believe it's appropriate to comment further. So that was her comment. But let me go back again. I get that part, or that you say there was good cause for doing what you did. But what about that allegation that county employees are taking your kids around and babysitting them?
Oh, they're false. My wife is a working.
Did she just make that up?
Well, I think I think it is made up. And my wife is a working wife. I support my wife in her career, which sometimes means I get kid duty. And so sometimes the kids get to come into work and see what daddy does for a living, and they're in the office.
All right. Well,
I've never ordered anybody to do anything.
Okay. But do you see where maybe, I've dealt with that situation where kids come into a workplace. I think a lot of people do. Is that really a good thing to have?
Well, we
kids
have
at the office?
We have bring the kid to work day, and I think it's good to have kids see what their parents do. I think it's a positive. I mean, my son saw what I did and gets excited about it and knows that dad does something important and is proud of that. Okay.
There was one other allegation that I saw in that suit, and that involved the fact that you leaked something to the media, a report on the county's IT department. As a journalist, I'm never too upset when people are leaking things, but I guess the argument was this was sensitive stuff, and that you were doing it mainly because there's a quote there that you said that if they didn't somehow if this report didn't come out the way it should, you would use it to blackmail the department, so you could have your own IT department.
Well, I already have.
Did I explain that?
And that's part of the allegation. I'm not sure what they're referring to. I have my own IT department, so I really don't see where.
Okay, so you weren't.
So I'm not really sure.
You weren't leaking, jeopardizing the security of the county, leaking something to the media that so you could use it as leverage.
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
And
why would I leak a report that I'm going to be publicly publishing?
Okay. All right. And we're just about done, because I don't want to spend all the time on this. But just going back to the kids, I mean, have you had second thoughts about it? Do you see where employees might? Some employees might not like the idea that people are bringing kids into the office. It's supposed to be a workplace, and
no, I think it's good that your kids know where you work and the work that you do, and I've allowed other employees to bring their kids in, and they have.
Okay, it doesn't take time. I mean, don't you? When kids are there, they got to be taken care of.
Well, have you had a kid with an iPod? They're usually pretty self-contained.
Okay, so the iPad or the iPod, and they're fine. Okay, all righty. Okay, so you're not changing your policy in any way on that. Okay, let's go into this. Let's go back to the report, to the beans. Okay, let's go back to the beans for a second. And one of the things that struck me on this is that there's this one little part, and by the way, I should say this report is 9 pages.
Right.
If folks really want to get into the weeds, there's another comprehensive report.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's
Look
for,
at this one.
That's for the bond
So that's
traders.
this one. Here's the one that everybody gets, and it's a lot of nice pictures
Yeah.
and stuff. And here's the real one.
Yeah,
and that's online.
Yes.
How can people get this if they really want to look at the finances of the county?
If they go to our website, is it ACOC.gov? That's a way to get it. All our reports are public, and they're there online.
All right, so they go to your website, and that, by the way, I think is 227 pages or something.
This
That's a
is
lot.
actually literally for the rating agencies and the others.
Yeah.
And I have to say, if you get insomnia, this is really good for that
Yeah,
as well.
okay, right. And hopefully, though, this show won't be giving people insomnia. Okay, all right. So one of the things I noticed, there's this thing called the net position of the county. It's basically the assets and the liabilities.
Yes.
And that has gone down over the last 5 years by 50%.
It's gone negative.
It was about $5 billion. In other words, the county had $5 billion more in assets than it owed. That's now $2.5 billion. It still sounds like a lot of money. Why has that gone down so much?
Well, we had, without getting too wonky and in the weeds, we had something called GADSB 68, Government Accounting Standards Board, released, where we actually put on the books for the first time ever the pension liability.
Ah, okay.
So
something I'd love to talk about, and you talk about putting people to sleep, you know, but that's all right. So that's all the money the county owes for retired
the
public
$4 billion,
employees.
yes. And we had to put that all on in one lump
So
sum.
you had to get honest about it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And to me, it was a good change in accounting policies. I think it was long overdue. When you hide a debt that big, it's hard to manage.
Right.
Now that it's kind of out there in the open on the table, I think it's very important.
So that's a day of reckoning. So it's gone down from $5 billion, let's say, to $2.5 billion.
And we're a little above $4 billion on the publishing of this report.
Okay. And what's the trend going to be? Is it going to continue to go down?
Depends on the stock market, but there's about 20 or 30 factors in there right now. Orange County employees pay almost their whole share of the pension, about 20%. That will help get the money in there to fund the plan. So it's in good shape, moving in the right direction, but it's one of those things that you've got to, be optimistic about and manage from a year to year.
One other thing I wanted to make sure we touch on is, and you show in the report, where the money goes. The biggest single item, and it accounts for almost 40% of the budget, is public protection. So what's public protection?
Well, that's the area that most people kind of know it as the sheriff, the DA, but also probation is in there. And believe it or not, for whatever reason, the clerk recorder is included in that.
But that's not a big, huge amount, is it?
No, it's small. Most of it is the sheriff. And that takes up about 20 to 25 cents on every dollar in the county.
And of course, again, just for viewers, that doesn't include your local police department or even the fire authority, right? That's separate.
No, fire authority is
this is mainly
separate.
the sheriff and the DA.
Correct.
Okay, now I've noticed that amount has gone from about 35% 5 years ago to 38.5% now, climbing toward 40%. The difference, I think, is like $220 million. Like suddenly in 5 years, $220 million more. Why is that?
Well, more cost to the sheriff's deputies. Those contracts are high value. They're also very asset-rich services. Cars, jails, facilities. Also, the pension costs. Their pension formula is a lot different than the regular employees.
I mean, the fact that $220 million more dollars, that doesn't mean there's $220 million worth of more deputies on the street or more deputies in the jail. It basically is we have to pay them more.
Yeah, cost of living increases. Always the competition issue. You don't want to become a agency that trains, and then you lose your good people to other agencies. So it's that parity.
But again, it just seems like everywhere you look in the budget, when you start getting into the weeds, you see how these pension costs are driving everything up.
Well, government is essentially a service business. So 80–90% of our costs are going to be personnel costs, and that means the pension, benefits, and salaries.
All right. You've been looking at all these county budgets. What irks you the most? Where is money being wasted?
That's a trick question, because it's what I don't know that I think irks me the most. I know what I know, and I can deal and I can work on managing that and affect change. It's the things I don't know that I think irk me the most. It's the things I can't find, and you just intuitively know.
What's something you can't find? What's something you're concerned about?
Well, a lot of outside contractors, vendors. We had essentially a kind of a fraud hotline that came into our office one day. Literally at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, I get a phone call. It was about a county vendor that was cheating us on federal funds, and it started a big investigation from my audit unit, and then we passed it off to law enforcement authorities to investigate further. And it's things like that.
Can you give us can you say any more about what
it's
kind
an ongoing
of a vendor it was?
It was in the area of like rehab and social services. And it's one of those things, it's ongoing, so I really can't talk too much about the details. But it's one of those things where you're trying to help people get their lives in order, but here's somebody diverting money and essentially ripping off the taxpayers.
Now, when you get that, do you have the power? You can go in and look at it?
Well, sometimes as a watchdog, we get to bark and raise alarms. We don't always have the authority to go in and stop things. In this case, we raised that alarm, gave it over to the social services, healthcare agency, and then gave it to law enforcement for further investigation. So, that's part of our job. It's not really a frustration because it's part of the process and the system that we're working in.
Okay, so when you see something, I mean, do you? Well, you tell me. Do you have the power? You think something's going on at the Board of Supervisors? They've approved something. Do they say, "Hey, that's our business"? Bug off, or
yes.
Do you have the power as the auditor to audit?
Well, I have the power, but there's a few flaws in state law that we need to work on. One is, we had some mailers last year in 2016 for the election, about 300,000 of them. They're very questionable mailers. I think they're starting up again with this election season. And, they look essentially like campaign mailers, but they're for a coffee with the supervisor or this elected official or that. And the problem here is, that doesn't look right, and I want to vet it and make sure that it's a legal payment, because under state law, if I make an illegal payment, I'm civilly liable. But here's the catch-22. Under criminal law, if I refuse a payment by a government entity, Board of Supervisors, another elected official, City Council, I can be criminally liable.
Yeah, so
I'm kind of in this
all right, and I think,
middle.
weren't there two supervisors, Supervisor Doe and...
Yeah, I think it was Bartlett and Doe.
Okay, all right. Lisa Bartlett and Andrew Doe. They're two of the five supervisors. And yeah, they didn't take kindly to what you were doing. You were basically saying they were misusing funds.
Right.
It raised the whole issue then about the fact that I guess you have to use the county's lawyer. And so you're going after the county and you're supposed to use, and you wanted your own lawyer.
Yes, and I actually tried to put that on the board and the agenda, and it got knocked off because I'm non-board members, one board member can knock off something from a non-board member. So,
and so then,
so
getting
we couldn't
knocked
even
off,
get heard.
But then you went to State Senator Pat Bates and asked her
to carry SB 292.
You tried to change the law so that you could hire, and any other auditor could hire their own lawyer, and that didn't turn out too well, did it?
Well, politics in Sacramento, that's another topic, and it can get interesting.
Well, let's close on that. We got about a minute, so let's close on politics in Sacramento. What happened there?
Well, it's the partisan fight got together, and Pat Bates didn't get any of her bills out of committee that year. We didn't lose on our merits. As a matter of fact, we have our bill coming back this session, and we're confident we'll actually get it through.
So you're going to be bringing that back?
Oh yeah, it's actually being carried by Assemblyman Daley out of Anaheim and Assemblywoman Quirk Silva.
How about, all right, so you got two of the Democrats carrying it
And
now.
Pat-
you might
and-
have a better chance
and
than,
Pat Bates
maybe
is
that's
also
what you
on
should
it,
have done
too.
to begin with, instead of having a
probably.
Republican carry.
But and Pat Bates is on it as well, and we're asking for the same authority that the assessors, county assessors, and the county sheriffs have. Because under state law, it specifically says county council is the legal advisor of the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, I guess just the one concern is, or some people saying, this will just create more politics. You'll use your lawyer to go after their lawyer and that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I'm the one who's personally liable.
Yeah.
So I have to take that part of my job very seriously.
Okay, great. Well, I hope the viewers got a sense that accounting doesn't have to be dull all the time, right? Okay,
Exactly.
So Eric, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you.
That's it for now. Thanks again to my guest, Eric Woolery. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com. You can also catch our shows and our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by
Each new community 5 Point brings to life represents a promise delivered. Great neighborhoods are more than just places to live, they are places to connect. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Chapman University is a proud sponsor of Inside OC and community programming.